today, we're going to be talking a little bit about spaceflight. So, I thought it would be kind of like an interesting topic to talk about because actually, rather recently, was the anniversary of the landing on the moon, and I believe that was on July 20th, and that was in 1969. But yeah, I just thought that'd be kind of like a cool thing to talk about. So, with that said, we can go ahead and jump right in. Let me just get this over here. So, I guess like the question is, like, let's look at the history. How did spaceflight actually begin? Like, what was the mindset of how do we go up? Like, how do we launch into space? And like, there was quite a few ideas. However, we actually start with the history of spaceflight clear back in like 1200. So, the original idea came from fireworks. So way back in the day, 1200 CE, ancient China developed black powder fireworks. And of course, they were used for multiple reasons, but I'm sure we've all seen Mulan, or Milan rather, and you've seen that they were used for war as well. It was a way that you could launch a projectile at an enemy and, cause devastation, or in Milan's case, she caused an avalanche. So, that's kind of where the idea came from, like, to use rockets, because what people saw is that if you could control the explosion, you could create vertical thrust. And in doing so, people now look at this now are like, how do we get from the ground to space? And you had a couple options. Obviously, the first options they looked at were more things like planes. So using planes to actually like fly up and see if we couldn't exit that way. However, while they did have like some designs that were possible to do that, it was extremely inefficient. Because the problem is, like, gravity itself, like getting to that point that you can reach escape velocity, is you have to have a lot of power behind whatever vehicle you're using to actually get past the gravitational pull of Earth, right? And so you have to figure out, how can I balance like my vehicle I'm using versus, the efficiency of it. And so people would look back at these fireworks and they'd be like, well, hey, this worked really well, like for vertical thrust, so getting off of Earth. And so they're like, all right, let's see if we can't make like something like this, but on obviously a much larger scale. And as it would turn out, blowing stuff up can get you places. So, and that like kind of takes us into, I would say, really the true start of rocketry. So, rockets are essentially like they're pressurized tanks with controlled combustion. It's like, would friction heat also cause issue on displacement? It could, especially like if you're talking like re-entry, if you're talking like even just safety, there's like a lot of potential problems there. So it's like you have air resistance, you have friction, you have like gravitational pull, you have just like the amount of thrust that you would need. There's certain like, yeah, it's crazy. The actual amount of like math that goes into this stuff is, I mean, it's literally rocket science, right? It's literally rocket science at the end of the day. So you're doing some crazy math just to get us off the ground. And literally it's like, speaking of math, literally all rocket is, it's like strapping yourself to a firework and just hoping that math loves you. Because if it doesn't, you're kind of cooked. But these things are essentially flying bombs that you'll do voodoo magic on to make sure that they don't like go crazy. And kind of like what I mentioned here, and I know this is kind of like a wall of text behind me, so I'm just trying to summarize it a bit. But they did experiment with a lot of different space planes. I mean, they even like had like shuttle designs and everything that they were going to use without the rockets. So it just ended up being the most efficient and honestly cost-effective way to get you to space. And where this comes with World War II is that there was, as everyone knows, there was like a huge focus on space. So with World War II, it was like Germany was trying to get things into space, because if you can get, like, imagine everyone's just basically using planes and boats and, ground forces. If you can now dominate space, so you get all the information from satellites, you can potentially weaponize space, and you could just have superiority that people can't match. It was a serious threat to everybody. Like anyone that could get into space, it would be a threat to everybody else. And so that's why there is such like importance placed on getting to space. That's why all these things happened, like that you see behind me, is like that's why there's such a focus on it. And especially like once World War II was coming to an end, there is the Cold War. So between the USSR and the United States. And it was still this like growing idea of we need to establish some form of space dominance. And so that's why behind me there it's called Operation Paperclip. So the US took 1,600 scientists that were actually part of the original Germany stuff with space and brought them over to the US to help us win the space race. One of those people was Wernher von Braun. So, and he was like really into the rocket stuff. So if you ever want a really interesting read, definitely look up Wernher von Braun. He was involved in a lot of different things. It's pretty cool. And in terms of like the first thing to reach space was actually the Germany's V2 rocket. That is the first non-man-made object to reach space. Or it was the first man-made object to reach space, not non-man. It was the first man-made object to reach space. My bad. But it was really interesting. Basically, this all came from the desire to have dominance in space, to make sure that no one else could harm us or that we could have control. So I thought that was really interesting. And that kind of brought us to the space race itself. So the USSR was actually the first people to reach space. So that was with Sputnik 1. That was with the first satellite. That was back in 1957. And then they followed that up with having Yuri be the first human in space in 1961. Now, just for like context of how close these are, like look at these dates. Like 1957, 1961, and then of course the actual Apollo 11 moon landing was in 1969. So this is like busting it, right? Like this is like fast. And it's like, I mean, like this stuff was like what, 4 years there and then 8 years to get to the moon from nothing, essentially. Like, I mean, they have some previous knowledge from during the time of World War II, but still, it's like, this is crazy. This is rapid development. And it's just like the moon landing was just seen as like the ultimate technological flex. Like, imagine you're a country and you're talking to somebody else. Yeah, get out of here, bot. Not Moobot though. Moobot, we love you, but like the bot that timed you out, get out of here. But is like imagine your country and you see that somebody else, especially in a time of war, which is always a bad time, but you see another country has landed on the freaking moon. Like, and you have no idea how to get there. You could be years behind, and this is like, imagine how big of a threat that is. That is like so scary. And so that's why everyone was like really racing to get it. And of course, the US landed on the moon. So as everyone knows, especially in a time where we have rockets that can little cities, literally, like, I mean, that was one of the things that was going on during World War II, is they were trying to figure out how to do rockets that could, attack cities. And so that's why this was so imperative that everyone had the ability to counterstrike this, right? And, but we did, the US did end up landing on the moon in 1969, and I did get the date right. It is July 20th, look at that. So, little over, what would that be, like 2 weeks ago? Is whenever there was the anniversary of the landing, and everyone knows, the famous quote, "One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind," by Neil Armstrong. It is, I'm not gonna lie, every single time that I see this quote, hear this quote, or just like watch the clip of it from whenever they were televising it, it literally sends chills like down my body. It is like so crazy. It's like that's amazing. That's genuinely amazing. Like the amount of effort and time and like drive that everyone had to make this happen was awesome. And so where did that kind of go, right? So landing on the moon was the end all, the goalpost of the space race. It was Apollo 11. It reached the moon in 1969, as we discussed. But space, like as a domain, I guess, didn't end there. So now that we knew how to get to space, and now that we Literally, right? Top 5 quote. But now that we knew how to get to space, we kind of knew the math behind it. We started to experiment with like different things. So that's where we started to see like more satellites went into orbit. That's where we started to see space stations beginning. And I actually did not know this next part. I did not know that there was a few space stations before the International Space Station. So Skylab, Mir, and I'm not going to say this right, so I apologize, but Salyut, I think it is, were like the first space stations before the ISS. And then those like were just kind of like where we tested things out, and then we actually got to the ISS, which is, I believe, last I checked, still in orbit today. And what was crazy about the ISS is it was only supposed to last, I think, like 10 years or something like that, 10 to 15 years. And I believe it's like way farther than that. It's like, I think it's 20 something. But I know that they're actually looking to decommission the ISS here soon. Like, I believe it's finishing up like its last couple of experiments, and then they're going to be looking to launch a couple new space stations here soon. Like the Axiom is planning to do one, and then the Orbital Reef, I believe, is the next one. And those are planned to be like modular space stations that they can like swap things out. So I think that'd be pretty cool. Some anti-cancer. Well, you know, it was launched in early times. Yeah, we've had time to cook. So, but it's like an impressive feat nonetheless. You know, like this is still a space station that the entire world can go to and come and visit. But kind of like still speaking of like the early days and like exactly, right? So we've had a lot of time to learn more and more about space, collect more data, and especially like that's kind of like the thing that's like almost a catch-22 with science, is that wherever you go to discover something for the first time, or you're in the process of discovering things, unfortunately bad things do happen, right? And it kind of takes those bad things to happen for us to be able to keep moving forward. So like, I mean, we can't really talk about spaceflight without also talking about like the Challenger explosion, right? So it was a horrible tragedy, but it was still like something that like NASA learned from and learned to check and everything. And there's like a lot of good, like really interesting documentaries about like what would happen with the Challenger exploding, like what was wrong with the O-ring. Those, if you're interested in like space in general, or just even like kind of the decision making that goes behind these big like these big projects, I definitely recommend looking into those, because you find out like, of course, you know, funding's involved, right? You have your investors who want to see this thing launch as fast as possible and like meet your timelines, but then there's also the engineers on the field that are like, well, hey, this is a problem, right? Like this O-ring, it's just not right. It's not connected properly, whatever. And then you like kind of find out how like the management behind that goes, and like you find out more about the actual like process of a launch. And I thought it was really, really interesting. It was obviously very devastating, but I would say that's also still like part of the process, is that bad things will happen, but amazing things come from it. So it's like, you know, the double-edged sword of science, I would say. But as long as we're talking about like early space stations, early missions, I thought it'd be kind of interesting to also like touch on the first 5 people or first 5 countries that got to space. So we did talk about USSR and the US with the space race, but a couple of other ones were France, Japan, and China. Each had their own missions to space. And this was around roughly the same time as the Cold War, if not a little bit after, that all these countries got to space. And nowadays, like modern times, there are now 90 countries that have made it to space. And like just that time frame of less than 100, like less than a century, we have went from not being able to get in space. Like we had our planes, you know, but now we have Voyager 1 and 2 that have literally left the solar system. We have satellites that are orbiting pretty much every planet like in here. We have had a satellite that has gone into like the sun's lower orbit and has been able to survive for a period of time. Like, I want you to like think about that. The advances that we've had in such a short period are crazy and insane. And that just make you like almost wonder, where are we going to be in, you know, 20 years, 30 years, a century? You know, there's so much potential. So much potential. We've got a little homie on Mars. Yep. That is one of the things actually that we're kind of talking about a little bit over here. So the goal, I think, or the goal of, I know at least SpaceX, is they want to get to Mars by sometime in the 2030s, right? And I would say this slide right here is kind of the next steps before we can go to Mars. And there's two main things going on here. So we have private spaceflight, which is SpaceX. So making the launchers cheaper, aiming for Mars. But there's also like some considerations on making a lunar colony. And I don't know if anyone played Moonbase Alpha, but I had to include it. Freaking, I love Moonbase Alpha. It's so funny. But I know that NASA's now looking to have start up a lunar colony. So if we could actually start to take rockets instead. Hey, yes, really stylo. Thank you so much for knowing the reference. I appreciate that so much. But yeah, if we could start to get components to the lunar colony, like if we build it out such that it could have a launch pad, it could have everything you would need to start a flight, we would save a ton of fuel. We would save a bunch of stuff because the moon doesn't have that same level of an escape velocity that we would have on Earth, that we have to deal with on Earth. So now you're not burning through just tons and tons of fuel, like boost rockets, everything, just to get off planet. Now you're literally launching in essentially a free zone. So you're saving a ton of money, first of all. You're saving a ton of money to do so. You're saving a ton of cost, efficiency. And now going to Mars is a lot more possible. And especially SpaceX has been doing a lot of honestly amazing advancements with reusable rockets, being able to land the boosters by themselves, being able to catch those boosters and everything like that. So by making it these programs, by making them cheaper and more effective that we can use them, it just it's building on itself. It's making that every single step is going to make us go even closer to Mars. And one of the things I thought would be kind of cool to mention is, while there is obviously the big goal of getting to Mars, some other companies are starting to look at doing other missions where it's more focused on the civilians. So people that wouldn't necessarily be involved with the engineering or with the companies at SpaceX, but still would want to go to space. And so I know there is a couple different companies that were doing stuff like this. I believe Virgin Galactic was one of them, that they have flights that take you to the edge of space where you can experience zero G. And then I know another company is looking to do a hotel in space. So they are gonna obviously these would be incredibly expensive. I wouldn't even want to know how much money it would be. I will say, I know that the Virgin Galactic one was $500,000 for a single ticket. Because at one point, I saw that they were having their initial launch or something, and it was you could win the ticket for free. And of course I signed up for it, because why wouldn't I sign up for it? But if you wanted to buy a ticket, it's $500,000. And I was yeah, I know. No, it's okay. I have my own chip like you. But yeah, I think that would be really cool. If people I think if more people got to experience space and be a part of it, I think there would be a stronger drive for it. And that kind of goes back to touch on the wartime things, is people are actively experiencing this, actively seeing at the time they're saying, okay, well, if this other country gets to space first, we're cooked. And so there's a lot of public interest, public support for getting to space. And there's still some, I would say now, but it's not as much as it was. So if we could actually start to commercialize space flights and get more people able to experience this, I think there would be a bigger drive and bigger support for it. It takes how long to get a bunch of credit cards? Yeah, no, literally, actually, fair point. What are they gonna do? Take a rocket up to get you? They're not going to do that. But yeah, if there was more public support, I feel we would have. I feel we'd be going well on our way to Mars. But even without that, that's one of the nice things that's nice about privately funded companies, is that they don't rely on that support as much. So SpaceX obviously have Starlink, that people are paying for. There's there's of course investors, so people that have a lot of money can invest in this as like an opportunity. So I think it's pretty cool. But obviously, where do we go from here? So let's say at this point we have our lunar colony. We're able to do launches. What's the next step? I think we all know what the next step is. Definitely to Mars. Mars is a very, very big goalpost for, I feel like, a lot of people. I know Buzz Aldrin is a very big proponent of getting us to Mars, and I think that is really cool. And so I would love to go to Mars. Like, crew, I don't know about you. Like, who here would love to go to Mars? If they were... Exactly. We have to get the potato farming done on Mars. But if you were given the opportunity to go to Mars, would you? Or even, like, it doesn't even have to be Mars. Let's say, like, for example, they are doing the lunar colony and they're putting out, like sign-up sheets to go and work on the lunar colony. Would you do it? I think, personally, I would. I think it'd be really, really fun, really cool. You're on Mars right now, really? Oh, how is it? Are you staying near the ice caps, or are you, like, in the middle of, like, the sandstorms? I think Mars would be also really cool, because, like, the thing is, it's really not that far away. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's far away. It's, like, a multiple-month trip. So, at best, you'd be gone, like, 2 years, at worst, more. But it's still close enough that, like, you can still come home, you know? I want to go down to Europa. Oh, you see, Almighty, you know how I am about Europa. You know for sure that there's gonna be a Reaper Leviathan, like, down there. I just know there will be. Or some sort of, like, giant fish. You can't have an underground ocean without having some sort of, like, giant fish. I don't believe it. You think there's Martians? I don't know if there's Martians. Maybe once upon a time. Just because, like, there was some, like, proof that they found that at one point Mars did host, like, rivers. And so there could have been life at one point. But just because the atmosphere of Mars is mostly stripped, like, it's a very weak atmosphere, if I remember correctly, then, I just don't think anything could survive in such a low, like, atmosphere condition. Now, if we start to get, like... I know one of the things that we're talking about with, like, going to Mars is... Obviously, the conversation of terraforming has popped up. And if you were to be able to terraform Mars, I think you could bring a lot of what was lost back. But I don't think, like, you could bring back any of the life, unfortunately. That's the whole plot of borrowed trauma, is it? Like going through Europa? I actually had borrowed trauma. I'll have to look at it. If Mars has life as tiny extremophiles like the Terragrees. Yeah, that's what, I think they, like... I don't know if it was Mars, but I think they, like, had a rover that found it or accidentally ran it over. Like, there was talk about it. I don't know if there's any, like, proof about it, but yeah, it would be... I mean, it's not gonna be, like, complex life or anything like, you know... Nothing nuts, I don't think. Well, I think Terra is still pretty complex, actually, but, it's not gonna be, like, animals or anything. So, unless, like, you know, maybe they're hiding underground. That is one of the things that, like, pops up with, like, a few exoplanets, is that, they could be hiding underground or just, like, you know, we can't see them. So, then, I don't know, we'll have to go there. The answer, obviously, is just we have to get there and we have to find out for ourselves. We have to do some exploration. And Silos, you're there, you're gonna have to let us know. Maybe you see some things. So, aside from Mars, you know, what is the future of spaceflight? And honestly, the future is, I would say, honestly, infinite. Because once we start to go out into space, and especially as we travel further, and even out of our solar system, there is so many potentials for things that we can go and find. I mean, if you're talking, like, things that will be a high point of interest, I would say, like asteroid mining and space tourism are going to be, like, huge revenues of money. Because, like, imagine, for example, like, we have asteroids that come to the solar system all the time. There's the, you know, the asteroid belt near us as well. And so, if you could even get some of those asteroids and start to harvest their materials, I mean, like, initially, if you could get it and start to harvest, like, you could make a lot of money because you'd be bringing in just a huge influx of material, but then obviously it would reduce the cost over time and it wouldn't work out so well. But the point is, you'd be able to expand and you'd be able to build further. And space tourism, I feel like, is always going to be a good source of revenue because, kind of like the same point of what Virgin Galactic was doing, is as, like, for someone that's interested in space and someone that has traveled it, getting to see it and getting to go up there and just like see Earth from an outside view is incredible. And I know if anyone's seen the image of the pale blue dot that the Voyager took, that is an incredible photo. Isn't there one nearby right now with showing literally? Yeah, there's like always. I know there is one with gold. I know what you're talking about. I know gold, iron, and then what else? There was another one. But yeah, literally, if it's like if we could even just capture like one of those, the price of maybe it was platinum. Yeah, if we could just capture one of those, the price of that would become like 0. So it's. I would say that's gonna be a like. Asteroid mining is going to be a really, really big source of material gains once we start to get to that point. And I mean, we're already landing on asteroids and taking samples of them. Yeah, that stuff is crazy. It's crazy. But that, and I would say, like, the other thing is, you know, as our understanding of space develops, as we find maybe even, like, materials we don't necessarily have on Earth or have or easy access to, maybe there's other materials we don't even know about. Maybe we can start to look at like warp drives, you know, or maybe we're going to go the route of Mass Effect where we have like the giant, like, I don't know what they're called. The giant stations that are basically warp drives, but it's not like on a ship. It's like a giant thing that you fly into and it shoots you across space. Do you think we ever have a chance to get FCL? Yeah, genuinely, yes. I think it's a complete possibility, especially like, I don't know if anyone's heard the recent news that the JWST may have just found proof that we exist in a black hole. And if that's the case, I feel like there are ways to utilize that. Like if we're in a black hole, maybe there's ways we can go, I don't want to say outside the black hole and then back in, because the amount of effort you'd have to do to even do that would be insane. But I feel like it's going to end up being, we're going to have to find a way to go into like a higher dimension, because I know one of the things that they mention is like folding space-time to create like a bubble around you to actually be able to go FTL. And I don't know why, but like I feel like if we are inside of a black hole, so we're already in like another level of a dimension, I feel like it just makes it more realistic to me. I'll be honest. So I feel like either way is what I'm trying to say. TLDR, I feel like yes. I feel like we will hit FTL at some point. Now, what I don't know is how soon that will be. That may be very, very far in the future. More than likely, I would expect that we would probably see more like generation ships. Like if we're talking like going from the Sol system to, you know, Alpha Centauri or something like that. Like, you know, our next neighbor. I would say more than likely it's going to be generation ships would be the starting point. And then maybe we'll starting like solar sails would be another one that we probably go into. So being able to, because there's no real friction in space, so we can just continuously boost and like get so fast that we would just be able to save our fuel for like whenever we're arriving and just start to do like microburst slowdowns. So I would say that's going to be the case going forward for the most part, unless there's just like some absolutely crazy advancement or they find just something absolutely insane. And they're like, hey guys, guess what? We can get FTL in like the next 20 years. I'd be like, yo, okay, wait, what? But yeah, if that answers your question. And also, speaking of questions, does anyone have any? So if you were an astronaut, where would you want to go in the space, like in our solar system? Is there any planet, any moons? I know we talked about Europa and Mars, but are there any other ones that you like to visit? What do you think about like the future? So we talked about a little bit about like FTL, but what do you think is going to be the future of like spaceflight in general? Do you think that people will start to get to go into like space hotels? Maybe we'll be able to book a stay at like a Mars hotel? Didn't we just get photographs of another galaxy with planets orbiting at semi-high? They are pretty common, actually, I would say. I shouldn't say common, but yes, there's a lot of different like systems out there that have like a similar setup where they have the sun in the center, and then they have like a habitable zone that has different planets, and then they also are able to discover like planets with like properties that allow them to know that there is lifelike conditions on those planets. So but yes, absolutely, there's definitely proof that those planets exist. I just hope we're allowed to see stuff like that. Literally same. Literally same. Would that not be like the coolest thing ever? Is just you're just sitting in like, I don't know, your living room or something, and all of a sudden, oh hey, we just discovered, you know, FTL. We landed on Mars. We built the lunar colony. Like, I think we're gonna see, like, especially the lunar colony in Mars. I think we're gonna see that. Awesomely, honestly. How do you think generation ships would work? Who would they have to populate them? How would they motivate partners to do that? So that is a good question. I know, like, as far as if in terms of working, right? If you've seen Wall-E, like the movie, that is a really good example of a generation ship. So they would have to be massive ships that have either the crew would almost certainly have to be either AI or some sort of like advanced technology that kind of monitors the entire ship's status. And then you'd have to have all the essentials on that ship that would allow us to continue to move forward without relying on Earth for anything. So you'd have to have farms, you'd have to have, like, you know, medical things that you could pull from. You would have to be able to, honestly, you would have to be able to get resources as you're flying, so you'd have to have some sort of way to mine asteroids or collect resources. But if you could have all of that, that would be, I mean, you would have everything you would need to travel. Motivating, I would say, people to do that, though, would be the harder challenge. Because I believe, and it's been a hot minute since I've looked into this, but if you're talking to be able to make a generational ship, to be able to travel like a, you know, in a unreasonably far distance, you would have to have a certain amount of people, like a certain amount of diversity in like genetics to be able to basically continue how we are now. And I think like the lowest amount was like 1,000 people. So this would have to be like a huge ship. So I mean, I guess cruise liners are pretty big, but it would still have to be quite large to be able to support like a huge population potentially. Do you ever think we could go the alien route and cryo sleep? Cryo sleep? That's a good question, honestly. I would say it's very dangerous. Like, you would have to look into how to do it correctly, but it's very dangerous. Because you're running a line of just shutting down the body and, like, completely killing the person. I would say interstellar. Potentially, I mean, like, obviously they take cryo sleep in interstellar. But, like, shooting out... Like, they have, like, samples of, like, human genetics or something. I don't remember the specific details. But, and they are going to essentially, air quotes, seed worlds, such that, like, humanity could... Or some form of life, I shouldn't say humanity, but some form of life could grow on those planets. I would say that could also be a potential, like, a realistic route. Because the other thing is, like, let's say, you know... I hope nothing happens to you guys' planet, but let's say something happens to Earth, right? And it's like Interstellar where you have to get out, you have to go somewhere else. Moving a large amount of people would be an extreme challenge. Like, without FTL, without, like, some sort of, like, transportation network, would be an extreme challenge. And then, even then, getting people to leave Earth would be, I mean... like, I don't want to say impossible, they'd be very, very, very difficult. Even with, like, cataclysms. I think it'd be very difficult. I will do my best. Yes, we had to fix the Aurora Bloom, but we will do our best. It's pretty big ship, but we'll have to see what we can do. Now, I also have FTL on my ship, so maybe we'll be okay. Looks at FTL core is broken. Oh, well, you know, details. Righty. So I think that's it. I'm actually, like, really curious about that cryo sleep thing. I'm gonna make sure to look into that. Let's explore space maybe one day. I'm literally right there with you, Kazuri. I'm genuinely with you, because how cool would it be, you know, like, if... And it's kind of like what I was saying, it's like, if they put out a request as, like, hey, we need people to come and just, like, help us build this stuff, help us explore it. I think it'd be really cool. And that's also, like, another thing, if, like, even just exploring space, maybe not, like, being there, but, like, exploring it from, like, a, like, scientific point of view. Like, that's why astrophysics and, like, astronomy is so cool. Because I know, my first time, whenever I was looking through a telescope, I was just in my backyard, and, like, I was looking into the night sky, and I knew where Saturn was, right? And, I've seen... You've seen, like, a ton of photos of Saturn online. And you know what Saturn looks like. But whenever you look at it through a telescope, and you're like searching the night sky for it, and then you finally see it, you see the rings around it, it's another world. It's so insane. Didn't much want to make the horizon. Yeah, I agree. It would be so dangerous. Like, I don't know how they would even do it. It's an interesting idea to like put you in a frozen state, because like the thing is, I feel like it's possible just because they have found like oh my gosh, I can't think of what it is. It was a caveman at one point, or like someone from history that actually was very preserved in like a mud or like a bog or something. I think it was literally called like the bog man or something like that. But of course, you know, we're talking really long time. Like I don't know if you could revive them. So it would be, yeah. Cryosleep, I think, would be running a very, very, very fine line on living and dying. And I don't know about that. I think more likely is going to be generation ships. And then if we do discover like dark matter or a way to control dark matter, FTL. But yeah, I would say that's kind of where I think things would align. No, I mean, I'm not, you know, don't quote me. Don't quote me on like cryosleep not happening, because it very well may. But we'll just have to see how it goes. Some form of suspended animation. Yeah, like, oh yeah, stasis. Stasis could be interesting. That would be I wonder how that would work. Like if you were put under, because I'm thinking of like a Mass Effect stasis kind of thing. If you were put under stasis, like would you be aware of it the whole time? Oh my gosh, you would go insane. I think that is everything we had for today, at least for the Galactic Curiosity. I definitely will also, what I wanted to say, I want to reach out to you guys about this. What topics would you be interested in seeing? Now, I do plan, Almighty, I know I asked you this on a previous stream, but I do plan on doing entomology for one of the Galactic Curiosities. But if there is a topic that you would love to hear about, or like would love for me to look into, definitely let me know and I will check it out. And it doesn't even have to be like about space. It could be about like things on Earth. Maybe it could be like the different cultures on Earth and like how they developed, because that was really cool. Like if for anyone that was here for the language Galactic Curiosity, that was really interesting. Like where we were talking about how like different languages formed because of the environment that people were in. So like you know, the Inuit had like a bunch of different languages for, or a bunch of different words for snow, because obviously they're around snow a lot. So having different words to mean different things developed into their own language. And I think that's really cool. So I am very, very open to like doing anything about Earth, anything about space, or I know I need to get brushed up on my Pokemon. So maybe something even about like Pokemon would be cool. But if anyone has anything that they would love to see, definitely let me know. You know, send me a message on X or Twitter, and I will put it down.